Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining me for the February 15th session of the OBX Wave Report, where we discuss all things waves, weather, climate, and beach lifestyle. And you might be looking at the header for the Wave Report today and be thinking, OBX, why is he talking about the Arctic? And you'll probably remember before where I talk a lot about climate, but you'll probably remember before when I was talking about what happens at the poles and, particularly in the Arctic and the Antarctic. I mean, those are our polar zones, doesn't stay at the poles. Um, the effects of climate change at the poles are affecting the Outer Banks right now. And as a climate blogger who previously focused primarily on threat analysis for climate crisis, I have made you this promise that I will not take my eye off the ball, even as I provide you guys with some wonderful wave reports for what's happening here locally. And I'm going to do my best to tie in what's happening globally and in the Arctic with what's happening in the Outer Banks. And we will be talking about the Outer Banks today. Just a brief little spoiler here, waves are in the 1 to 3 foot range across the Outer Banks, but we're going to start out at the Arctic. And I know I mentioned recently a series of North Atlantic storms, a series of strong North Atlantic storms that pumped up the wave heights out here in the North Atlantic. And right now I'm looking at a model of wave heights from February the 6th, where we had a very large gale and storm that was pushing winds from the southwest toward the northeast across a large swath of the North Atlantic and the Arctic Ocean. And back then I did some chatting about how there were large waves next to the sea ice and how this can impact the sea ice. But I was going back through the models just as a bit of curiosity, and I found something pretty crazy. I found that these waves blew a large hole north of Svalbard. This is Svalbard here. So you've got Greenland to the west. Svalbard right here is this cluster of islands next to the green dot. And just to the south here is Scandinavia. So like Norway and Sweden and Finland over here. And then you've got Iceland here. And then to the south and east, that's Russia. So that's the geographic location, just moving out a little bit. You see the North Pole right here. So Svalbard is this cluster of islands that sits in the high Arctic in the far north, and it's typically thought of as a frigid, frozen place. But as climate change has impacted the Arctic in recent years, Svalbard has warmed considerably, and we're going to get a little bit more into the warmth around Svalbard this year as well, because that also um, has helped to make the sea ice to the north of Svalbard here weaker and more, or we'll say just less resilient to large waves. But what happened is it's just nuts. You got these big storms coming in here, and then these large waves near the ice. They're just smashing the ice. So right now in the model on February the 6th, which was 9 days ago, we have some large waves coming in toward the ice as a result of a powerful storm moving up across Iceland and into the Arctic Ocean. Now let's go ahead and advance the model and see what happens. And this is the thing I discovered today. So the waves get really, really big near the sea ice on the 7th of February, just north of Svalbard here. Significant wave heights in the range of 20 feet. If you look in the left-hand side of the screen here, I'm highlighting it with my cursor. And then on the 8th, the waves push through, and of course after they smash the ice and the storm subsides a bit, the waves subside as well into the looks like 10-foot significant wave height range. But look at this. The waves just rushed on through, and now there's this big hole. So let's go back to the 7th. There was a hole in the ice behind this cluster of islands east of Svalbard, And of course, there was a gap in the ice, but then the waves rushed through and boom, you can see the size grow. Let's just zoom in and do that again. So smaller holes and the waves come through and then boom, bigger holes. Now we've got another blow coming in here just near Scandinavia with massive significant wave heights near Scandinavia in the range of nearly 40 feet, which is nuts. And here near the ice, the significant wave heights are in the range of 10 feet, which is nothing to shake a stick at. And then by the time we get to the 9th, we have the large waves in these large holes smashing the ice some more. So again, the ice hole expands as the large waves smash it and these waves move on in. And then as we get into the 10th, the ice holes expand again and we have one contiguous ice hole now as the large waves rush through, and then continuing to expand in through the 11th. And looks like continuing to expand in through the 12th. So what you've got is a 3-day, 4-day event, maybe 5-day event in which large waves rushed in, smashed the ice, and blew a big hole here to the north of Svalbard in the sea ice. And I mean, this is, I don't know, like a hole that's maybe 300 miles long here, maybe more. Yeah, let's see. I'm just going to get a geographical comparison. Looks like maybe 400 mile long hole in the ice, smashed in the ice by large waves over the course of about 5 days. So yeah, the storms do have an impact on the Arctic sea ice. Now, the storms don't you produce this action all by themselves. The ground has to be prepped in the form of much warmer than normal temperatures. And this is exactly what we've seen. So this is a graphic provided by Zach Labe. I encourage you to follow him. He is a climatologist that focuses in on the polar regions of the world, particularly the Arctic. And look at these temperature anomaly maps for January and November through January as well. So like in the January temperature anomaly map, Svalbard is in this area of much warmer than normal weather. In fact, Svalbard is kind of right near the hotspot for the Arctic for January for anomalies. So you have more than 8 degrees Celsius above normal temperatures for the entire month of January there in Svalbard. That's very significant above normal temperatures. And then for the entire period of November through January, we also have much warmer than normal temperatures there in Svalbard. So those warmer than normal temperatures have made the ice more thin and more vulnerable to the powerful storms that have been rushing up through the region. And it is worth noting that the Arctic sea ice and the Antarctic sea ice are both near record low levels. So the Antarctic, for example, is, well, just hit a new record low. Okay, this is something I didn't know, but I'm just looking at Zach Labe's Twitter feed, and the Antarctic sea ice just hit a new record low. And then let's look at the Arctic. Hopefully he'll have something. I am going to find out about the Arctic. Okay, so global sea ice is now at record lows, and here we go. Here's the Arctic. And so the Arctic right now is looks like third lowest on record. So Arctic is near record lows for this time of year as well. And in large part due to the extra heat near Svalbard and the effect of waves smashing the sea ice. So here we are at the OBX wave report talking about giant waves smashing sea ice. Who would have ever thunk it? All right, yeah, waves, weather, and climate, guys. Waves and climate. This is a wave and climate feature for the Northern Hemisphere right now. Big storms hurling huge waves at the sea ice and smashing it as it has been weakened by global heating driven by fossil fuel burning. The sea ice is important. Why? So we were going to talk a little bit about why we should be concerned about sea ice here in the Outer Banks. And the reason why is that the sea ice protects the cold in the Arctic, and it also protects the land glaciers here in Greenland, which is the largest area of frozen water here in the northern hemisphere. And the sea ice in the southern hemisphere protects the giant frozen mass of ice in Antarctica. And so if the sea ice is at record low, there's less protection for these glaciers, and there's more vulnerability to the glaciers melting rapidly. And if those land glaciers melt, then the sea level rise accelerates here in the Outer Banks. And if Greenland melts rapidly, then you get a slowing down of the Gulf Stream, which can back water up toward the coastline more and cause local sea level rise. And if you get melting here down in Antarctica, the water that's deposited in the oceans from the melting glaciers due to gravity causes more sea level rise here in the northern hemisphere, which also has an impact on the Outer Banks. So that's why we should be concerned about sea ice. All right, so let's get back to the local level, or the more local level, looking at the lower 48. We have a beautiful geocolor image here provided by NOAA. It's just gorgeous, and we have two storm systems in the United States right now, or two major storm systems. One over the Rockies here in, looks like Utah, Colorado area, New Mexico, and Arizona, heading on off toward the east. And then we have a larger storm system with a frontal boundary draping down behind it, larger storm system over the Great Lakes, and the frontal boundary draping on over the southeastern United States. Looking at the infrared satellite shot, we can see the masses, the two masses of clouds swirling with the colder cloud tops, the one moving up through the Great Lakes, and then the storms associated with the front draping over the United States with the colder cloud tops associated with the storms, and very cold cloud tops here over areas of, looks like New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, getting into the Dakotas and Nebraska, parts of Texas. And so this is our next storm system here that we need to keep an eye on, possibly for severe weather here in the southeast. And we've got a couple of areas of disturbed weather lurking off the west coast here. West coast has been pretty intense as far as winds go and large surf. There's been some pretty serious large surf on the west coast, and gale force winds up. Gale force wind warnings up, and you can see those. Actually, gale force wind warnings up yesterday. Today it looks like small draft advisories. So small draft advisories up, my correction. And you can see those winter weather advisories in association with a new storm that's starting to form in the central US. And you can see the rain shield and snow shield of the other storm over the Great Lakes and the frontal boundary sweeping on across the US Southeast. For the waters off the US Northeast right now, we've got calmer conditions as storms exit, although we are looking toward a possible gale for regions off the US Northeast on Friday. Looking at the NOAA quantitative prediction forecast, it does look like we have the potential for heavy rains running in through Alabama, parts of Mississippi, Kentucky, and Tennessee, as well as parts of West Virginia over the next week. There is still an indicator of storms forming off the US East Coast. We're going to have to keep an eye on that for both waves and weather here in the Outer Banks. And then for the Pacific Northwest, there is an enhanced likelihood of heavy rains. This is seasonally typical, although we might be seeing some above average rainfalls in portions of the region. California tends to be drier over the next 7 days. This is part of a drier trend for California, which is a little bit concerning considering the drought conditions there. California of late has received its precipitation in big, massive deluges, and then in the in-between times, well, we have these like brief deluges and then large periods of drier than normal conditions, and then more brief deluges, and that's more difficult to manage. And that's also a feature that was predicted by the climate scientists, and we're starting to see that now as the Earth system warms up by about 1.2 degrees above early 20th century baselines. All right, so let's go down to the coastline and talk waves. And getting on down to the coastline at Jeanette's Pier, we find that waves right now are in the range of 1 to 2 feet. So rather smaller. Looking at the wave models, we do have the swell coming in from the east, and the swell is about 3.5 feet, and it's getting cut down a little bit as it gets in toward the coastline, producing 1 to 2 foot waves. The primary swell at the coast coming in at 8 seconds, that's out of the northeast. So coming pretty direct on the shore. Wave conditions might be a little bit better than indicated in this model that I'm getting here for the coast, but probably about right. And then we have a secondary swell coming in from the southeast. The primary swell is closer to 2 feet. The secondary swell is less than 1. Winds are out of the south-southeast here, and that's actually a little bit offshore with a cross-shore component because of the northeast cant to the coastline. Winds out of the south-southeast at 15 miles per hour. That 15 mile per hour wind might be blowing a little bit of the swell offshore, but it's not too strong. Air temperatures right now in the range of 56 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty warm out there today. High expected of around 60. Might get even warmer. It was rather warm yesterday, despite a predicted high of 49. I think it got up into the lower to middle 50s. And then the ocean water temperature is 50 degrees, so make sure you got your cold water protection. We're going to head on down to the coast, get a little surfing in, maybe a little bodyboarding in, depending on the wave conditions. I don't have my GoPro yet. It is coming today. I am so excited. I'm really stoked. We're going to have all sorts of added features now for the OBX wave report, and I'm going to get into the water more, which is fun. And for the most part, I think I will be, at first at least, making a fool out of myself for you guys as I get used to managing a camera and reacquiring all the surfing skills and getting my lower body strength up to where it needs to be. My left hip strength is not where I want it. I've got some tightness and stickiness in my left hip, and I don't like that. So I've been doing the lunges and the squats and working on it, as well as the pop-ups, but also like shifting my balance around, because there's parts where like I'll twist a little bit, it just feels kind of off. You get that, like, when you have the balance and you need the strength and balance as you make like turns through your core area. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I get this sense like every now and again, like, whoa, kind of like a weirdness. It's not pain, but it feels like the joint is not as integral as it could be. So I'm trying to strengthen the muscles around it so that I can get, work through the stiffness and get back to having a more full, confident range of motion and better balance. But we're going to work through all that, and we're going to try and improve, because that's what we do. And in any case, though, I know I got a little on a tangent there. In any case, the weather forecast today is clouds and sun with a high of 60 degrees at Jeanette's Pier. The conditions for most of the northern and central beaches are about the same, either 0 to 2 feet or 1 to 2 feet. So from Kitty Hawk all the way down to Avon, so including Rodanthe waves, Salvo, Avon itself, waves are in the range of 0 to 2 or 1 to 2 feet. Likely rideable conditions, nothing to write home about. Pretty good conditions, I guess, if you still have like a groveler or a longboard. I'm going to go out there with a hybrid, the Rocket Redux, and get out there and see if I can catch some waves and just improve my skills a little bit. But as we get on down to Buxton and Billy Mitchell, the wave conditions do improve a little bit. So at Buxton right now, the waves are about 2 to 3 feet, with a primary swell coming in in at 8 seconds from the northeast, and a secondary swell coming in at 8 seconds from the southeast. There's closer to 3-foot waves coming in from the northeast. Winds are out of the southwest, so blowing offshore here for the east-facing beaches at 13 miles per hour. That'll tend to hollow those waves out a bit more. It just sounds to me like the waves down in Buxton will have better features overall, given the indicators coming in from this report. Air temperatures are 63 degrees Fahrenheit. We got a major drop down in temperatures for the ocean at Buxton, and now ocean water temperatures are 59 degrees Fahrenheit. This is about 7 degrees cooler than it has been. We've got more of that Labrador current influence coming in from the north, and the Gulf Stream has been pushed offshore. We'll see if the Gulf Stream influence comes back. That's kind of curious to me. It's very interesting how the Gulf Stream influence moves up and down the Outer Banks. Right now it's offshore for the most part. And weather conditions there at Buxton are partly cloudy for today, expected high of 66 degrees, so very warm for this time of year. And then heading on down Route 12, taking that right-hand turn at Hatteras Island Village, we're going to go on down to Billy Mitchell Airport, the home of naval aviation, the origin place of naval aviation. And we find that waves over at Billy Mitchell Airport are also in the range of 2 to 3 feet. It is worth noting that in the swell indicator, the swell is actually a bit larger here at Billy Mitchell than it is at Buxton. So Buxton does not have the crown for big waves today, although you can't really say that 2 to 3 foot waves are big. I mean, it's just, it's rideable stuff. Okay, so 2 to 3 foot waves here at Billy Mitchell with a primary swell coming in from the southwest at 4 seconds and a secondary swell coming in at 7 seconds. The primary swell coming in from the southwest and the secondary swell coming in from the southeast. And with that south-facing beach, so you've got the southwest swell coming in from here and the southeast swell coming in from here. Winds are also coming in from the southwest, trailing in that primary swell there. And air temperatures are 62 degrees Fahrenheit, ocean water temperatures also at 59. Weather conditions expected to be partly cloudy as well with a high of 66. All right, so let's get out to some more longer range type forecast stuff. It's worth noting that in the 8 to 14 day monitor, the warmer than normal conditions appear more and more centered toward the Gulf Coast. And this is interesting because it tracks with a climate type feature that we have seen here over the North Atlantic and in the Gulf of Mexico, where water temperatures have been much warmer than normal. And it appears that this ocean influence is helping to keep air temperatures here for the southeast warmer to much warmer than normal versus seasonal norms for the 20th century. For the longer range outlook, we expect to see below normal temperatures for the Pacific, particularly for the Northwest region. And this setup is a dipole. I've been talking about the dipole for days and days and days now. Dipole means that one area is warmer than normal and one area is colder than normal. And then you tend to have a battleground between the two air masses, which tends to ignite stormy conditions. And that's kind of what we see in the precipitation outlook, although it looks like the battleground is more shifting toward the Ohio River Valley for the east, and then for the west over California, and then parts of Oregon, Nevada. Looks like maybe Utah and Idaho getting involved here, Montana as well. So potential for above normal precipitation in this region here, and also running in through the Great Lakes. It is worth noting that with that Gulf moisture, there is a probable potential for severe weather over parts of Texas, the Mississippi River Valley, and then running on up toward the Great Lakes. And we'll just have to keep a look at the convective analysis provided by the Storm Prediction Center. And it is worth noting that for today, that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing an enhanced, I'm going to go ahead and enhanced likelihood of severe weather running from Alabama all the way up through Ohio, and Alabama and Mississippi all the way up through Ohio. And that's when you see that enhanced, that means that there's um, a greater chance of tornadic, supercell, powerful straight line thunderstorms, or thunderstorms that produce dangerous lightning and hail and severe winds. So, like all of the really big, burly, tough thunderstorms are more likely in an enhanced state. We haven't gotten into the moderate range for risk for those storms yet, but enhanced it's not something to take too lightly, and we're not in the high risk range either, but it does look like this convective analysis provides a likelihood for severe weather. And now I'm a little bit curious about the 3-day outlook. Yeah, so the risk of severe thunderstorms shifts east on, let's see, today is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, on Friday and Saturday. And then in the 4 to 8 day outlook, I'm just going to let this roll through. Doesn't look like we've got much in the way of severe weather coming up in the longer term outlook. So right now, looks like severe weather is focusing in actually on today, which makes me a little curious. It almost makes me want to go back and reanalyze the satellite shot. We might do that. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and look at the longer range forecast. And right now we have this low pressure system with a front sinking in. And for today, let's see how those storms are expected to fire up as we get late into the day. So this is interesting to me as we get into late into the day. Actually, this is, I want to make sure this is right. This is day 2. So forecast, this is for Friday. Okay, so Friday, let's look at Friday in the model. So Thursday we've got, so remember that swirl of air over here over the Rockies? That is expected to track east and then fire up some severe weather on Friday as it heads into the Tennessee, Kentucky region with some severe storms, looks like in the model running in through Ohio and West Virginia, parts of Western Pennsylvania. And then in the trailing front, powerful storms firing up across parts of Georgia, Alabama, Western North Carolina, and South Carolina as well. And then trailing storms running in through the southeast on Saturday. So that's the severe weather potential with this next low that's right now over the Rockies. All right. So I don't really need to look at the satellite shot, although I might again because that storm system did look like it had a little bit more oomph in the way of energy, more convective lift. And let's go ahead and refresh this. Not much. But you do see those high cloud tops there. And if that energy swoops down and taps into that Gulf moisture, we could definitely see some severe weather running up from the Gulf Coast all the way up through Ohio on Friday. Let's just keep a weather eye. There's not going to be as much in the way of severe weather according to the forecast associated with this front that's coming through the southeast today. Now, looking at the Outer Banks, I do want to go through our wave models. I know this has been a pretty long wave report, but we've done the Arctic analysis, so I did want to provide that for you guys. All right, let's look at now. All right, so we've got these 3-foot swells that are coming in from the east toward the Outer Banks now. 2.9 to looks like 3.6 feet on the east facing beaches, and then about 3.5 feet south. So north to south, about the same, 3-foot waves, but they're coming in out of the east, so this is a good orientation. The winds out of the southwest aren't too strong, so it's not likely to blow them out. The wave maker is out here off the US northeast coast, but the waves aren't too big. And for tomorrow, the significant wave heights are expected to remain in about the 3-foot range, although it looks like it's expected to get a little bit smaller for tomorrow. Not by much, though. And then on into Friday, we get more of that influence from the Storms, this frontal storm that's expected to fire up the severe weather from Mississippi to Ohio will start to bring in some southerly winds here. And let's look at the air model. And these are strong southerly winds in the range of, looks like near gale force off just offshore. So that's actually a very strong southwesterly wind flow there. And so for the Outer Banks, the southwesterly wind flow is expected to kick up the swell off the Outer Banks, swell coming in from the south and southwest. So the south-facing beaches will see the larger surf with significant wave heights in the range of about 9 feet. We might get a nice wraparound swell here further to the north, but with those strong southwesterly winds, there's also a risk that the waves might get blown offshore into Friday. And then as we head on into Saturday, the winds turn around to the north. Let's look at the air models. Yeah, about north and northwest here. And still relatively brisk winds. And the waves also, the swell turns around as well, coming out of the north in the range of about 6 feet. And then as we get into Sunday, the waves tamp down pretty immediately to looks like the 2 to 3 foot range, so small waves as well. Looks like if we want to go get waves, we might have to brave some choppy conditions on Thursday and Friday. Although we'll see. Sometimes the wave models are wrong. But in any case, wave conditions, I don't know. It doesn't seem like they'll be as good this week as they were last week. Last week was a fantastic week for waves, and I guess you can't get it all. But in any case, thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. We did talk about climate in this wave report. We did talk about the Arctic. The Arctic is fascinating to me, and so is the Antarctic. And it does have an effect here on storms in the Outer Banks. What happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic. And it does have an effect on sea level rise, particularly both for the Arctic and the Antarctic. So we should care in the Outer Banks what happens here in the Arctic. So thank you for joining me again. And as I do in my various episodes, I'd just like to ask you to please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy and to tamp back fossil fuel burning as rapidly as we can to get to what they call net zero and net negative carbon emissions as rapidly as we can. And we can do this. We can do this pretty easily. It seems easy to me. It just seems like just a matter of focused effort as a society to transition from fossil fuel burning, which is the driver of climate change, to clean energy. And yesterday on Valentine's Day, my wife Kat and I did this thing where we got an electric bike. I got her this awesome electric bike. I'm going to show you this picture. She just looks so happy on this thing, and I'm really stoked about her getting a chance to ride this thing around the islands. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to talk a little about an electric bike. So this is a Magnum electric bike, and it's a real like clean energy and efficiency dream. I mean, electric vehicles are fantastic as well, but the bike is just something else when it comes to efficiency and environmental friendliness. And if you add a little battery to these things, you get about a 35-mile range. And one of the fun things about these bikes is you can do the pedal thing and you can use it as a bike and you don't have to use the battery at all. But if you need a little extra range and it's getting beyond what you could typically do just on muscle power, you can engage that battery and you can get further. So it's like this wonderful blend of almost a moped that's managed by just this little battery and a little electric motor here, and a bicycle, which is already, it's muscle powered. It's powered by your body. So what an amazing feature, what an amazing alternative to fossil fuel based transportation. And here on the islands, Manio in particular is just so bikeable, and she wants to use it to get out over to Nag's Head and over to like some of the places out there. just to have some like added mobility and some mobility options, and but not use a car. And so here we go. So this is one of the things that we're doing to help speed the clean energy transition. We're going to be doing some things with our home as well. I'll get into that when we do it. But yeah, there's all sorts of things that we can do and that add joy and pleasure and expanded access and expanded capability and healthy expanded capability. I mean, this thing's not spewing out nasty fumes and stuff that's going to wreck your lungs or your brain. It's not, it doesn't have, it's not like aerosolizing toxic chemicals that you have to breathe as you sit on it. So it's just a nice thing that you can go out and enjoy your community, your environment, do all sorts of fun stuff with. Yeah, and if you're a surfer, you can just throw a little surfboard rack on the side of these things and power on over to the beaches. Yay. Clean energy. It's the good stuffs. All right. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. We're going to get down to the beaches today and I'll get you some reports and we're going to do a little surfing and we're going to work on our hip strength and on our pop-ups and all the things. All right. So take care. And